I think the success of open source activities from a development point of view, from organizational development point of view also, many people outside of IT started paying attention to this new, so to speak, movement. And I think there are many books in the United States which talks about that. Right. And would you let us know how you see the impact of open source movement beyond IT?
I think it's had a huge impact. I think, one of the first books that chronicled the impact of collaborative development on society and other industries outside of IT was a book titled Wikinomics, where they examined the phenomena of Linux and showed how it's really impacting other industries, whether it's the pharmaceutical industry or the mining industry. That they give some wonderful examples of how a mining company in Canada had open sourced their geology survey, and were looking essentially for gold, and this data was the most closely guarded secret in the mining industry.
I see.
But by opening it up and allowing sort of anybody to analyze it as a contest, they actually discovered one of the richest finds, I think, of gold that they'd ever found. So it just was a great example of how sort of crowdsourcing and collaborative development is really impacting other sectors of industry. And what's, from my personal perspective, sort of interesting is the number one call that I get from CEOs or business leaders is not about Linux. I get calls from people all the time, and I assume usually, well, what do you want to know about Linux? And they say, no, that's not what we want to know. We want to know how you do it. And you can appreciate this because LPI was an early organization in Linux and open source. 10 years ago, you'd have to convince people that open development is better, and you don't have to give away all your intellectual property, and it's safe and secure and all that. Today, nobody cares about that. People call me and say, I'm convinced this is a better way, a better, faster, cheaper way to innovate. I'm convinced. What they want to know today is specifically how you do it. Which license should I use for my intellectual property? Should I use the GPL, the Apache license, the EPL? How do I set up a governance structure for an open source project? Who's the maintainer? How are technical decisions made? How do you raise money to support the organization? How should I structure incorporating an open source effort? Should it be a nonprofit? Should it be a for-profit? They want, in detail, the specific model of how we do it. That's the number one question I get from business leaders. It's not about Linux, it's about the model. And we actually have several projects at the Linux Foundation through our collaborative services that we offer that are working with organizations entirely outside of IT to host projects for collaborative development.
Oh, I didn't know it.
That's right. That's what we're doing.
So your homepage shows these services?
Yeah, you can go to the Linux Foundation homepage, and there's a button on our collaborative projects, and you'll see a whole host of software projects, mobile operating systems like Tizen, software-defined networking controllers like Open Daylight, but you'll also see other projects that are outside of that.
I see.
I was surprised a couple of years ago. I got a call from the New York Stock Exchange saying that they wanted to open source some of their key technology. Right here, Wall Street, right? The industry that keeps everything, shares nothing, is now sharing their software to improve the trading platforms that are used by the financial services industry. So.
A couple of years ago, I attended sake, Japanese sake tasting just like wine tasting,
Sure.
where there are many local sake manufacturers were.
Right.
And I met one of the owner of the Japanese sake companies, and I gave my business card, which shows Linux Professional Institute.
Right.
And this gentleman said, "Oh, you are Linux, where the Linus Torvalds leads, right?"
Right.
So I said, "Yeah," but I asked him why, as a Japanese sake company manager, happened to know Linus Torvalds, and I asked him if you are thinking of using Linux in your company, in his company, and he said, "No. The successor of sake manufacturers are decreasing, and only few people, obviously from age point of view, senior people, they know how to make good sake, but their sons and daughters are not necessarily willing to succeed
Right.
the sake manufacturers, right?" So what the owners started doing was they hired a bunch of MBA who obviously know how to run the corporations,
Right.
companies, from sales and marketing and many other aspects, but they do not know how to make good sake. So what they decided was they formed, so to speak, a consortium of these Japanese sake manufacturers, and they decided to share the know-how associated with the sake manufacturing technology, and they wanted to make sure that by collaboration they want to improve the baseline technology, so to speak, and on top of that, each manufacturer has decided to put the differentiation factor. And so they decided to find out what kind of organization may be best, so to speak, to learn as to how collaboration activities are done successfully. And they found out that the Linux organization is the best. And so these people started learning how Linus Torvalds was really managing the open source activity, and they tried to adapt from open source activity of Linux to sake manufacturing environment. So that was quite interesting.
I'm sure that there are many kernel developers who would be more than happy to help the sake manufacturing industry just in exchange for some good sake.
Right, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.